Smoke curled through the broken corridors, thick with the metallic sting of burned alloys and blood. Thomas Sloan pressed his shoulder against the half-collapsed bulkhead, straining to shove the twisted metal just far enough to drag the alien soldier out from beneath it. The creature's breath rattled, uneven and wet, the sound of lungs fighting their last battle. Brendan Dunn crouched nearby, his face streaked with grease and ash, running his hands over the edges of the wreckage. "You're insane, Tom. This thing was shooting at us 20 minutes ago." "Doesn't matter," Thomas grunted, driving his boots into the cracked deck for leverage. "It's still alive." The bulkhead shifted with a grinding screech. Sloan pulled until his arms burned, finally clearing enough space for the limp body to slide free. The alien's skin shimmered faintly under the emergency lights, a bluish sheen mottled by burns. Its four-fingered hand twitched against the deck, like it was reaching for something it had already lost. Lauren Green knelt at its side, snapping open her med kit. She didn't look up. "If it lives, maybe it talks. If it talks, maybe we understand what the hell happened here." Brendan leaned against the wall, breathing hard. His sarcasm barely masked his unease. "Or maybe it wakes up and tries to rip your face off. Ever think of that?" Lauren shot him a glance sharp enough to silence him, then pressed a dermal patch against the creature's chest. The medgel spread across its burns, fizzing faintly as it fused torn flesh. The corridor shook around them. Somewhere deep in the ruined ship, a reactor groaned, its death throes echoing through the hull. The Galaxy's war had left another graveyard drifting in silence, and now 3 humans were crawling through the wreckage, too stubborn or too stupid to leave it alone. Thomas wiped sweat from his brow and studied the alien they had pulled from the debris. Its uniform was charred, but the emblem stitched across its shoulder was unmistakable. He'd seen it on both sides of the conflict raging across the stars. "Council or Dominion?" he asked quietly. Lauren shook her head. "Does it matter?" Brendan let out a humorless laugh. "Matters if one side thinks we saved their enemy. Either way, congratulations. You just dragged us into someone else's war." The alien's eyelids fluttered, and it fixed its gaze on Thomas with startling clarity. Its lips parted, voice ragged but deliberate, each word scraped out in the broken cadences of a language no human should have understood. "They will hunt you all." The words hung in the silence, heavy and cold. Thomas glanced at Lauren, then at Brendan. None of them spoke. The ruined ship creaked, and the stars beyond its broken hull seemed to press closer, as if the galaxy itself had been listening. The alien's warning lingered like smoke in the air, seeping into Thomas Sloan's thoughts even as the creature's chest shuddered with another broken breath. Lauren pressed her hand against its side, steady but tense. She knew it wasn't going to last long, not without more than a medkit patch and determination. Brendan shifted his weight uneasily, his boots crunching over shattered plating. His voice carried that nervous humor he always leaned on when things got too real. "Great, so now we're officially cursed. First expedition from Earth to make contact, and our new friend's opening line is that we're all about to get hunted." "Shut up, Brendan," Lauren said, sharper than she intended. She adjusted the patch, her brow furrowed. "This isn't just talk. He's terrified." Thomas crouched low, close enough to meet the alien's eyes. They were luminous, silver at the core, reflecting the dull red glow of the emergency lights. Not the look of a soldier anymore, but of someone watching their end come far too soon. "What do you mean hunted?" Thomas asked quietly. The alien coughed, blood flecking its lips. It tried to lift its hand, but the effort failed. Instead, it forced out another whisper, fractured by pain. "The war, not for power. For survival. Yours. And first." Its body went slack before Thomas could push further, the last tremor leaving its hand as it dropped lifeless to the deck. For a moment, silence pressed in heavy, broken only by the distant hum of failing systems. Brendan blew out a breath and rubbed his forehead with the back of his hand. "So that's it. We drag a dying alien out of rubble, and its last words are basically a death prophecy for the human race. I vote we get the hell out before the ship folds in on itself." Lauren sat back on her heels, staring down at the still body. He wasn't making it up. That wasn't strategy or manipulation. That was fear. Pure fear. She finally looked at Thomas, her voice low. "Who in this galaxy has the power to make a soldier like that, someone bred for war, die afraid?" Thomas didn't answer. He stood, scanning the ruined corridor, the shredded wires that dangled like veins, the deep gashes carved into the walls from weapons he didn't recognize. This wasn't just wreckage from a battle. It felt like something had torn through the ship deliberately, leaving nothing alive in its wake except a single soldier barely clinging on. "Look around," Thomas finally said. Whoever did this wasn't fighting to win. They were cleaning up. The words sank in, the weight of them pulling the air tighter around the three of them. A sudden metallic clang echoed down the corridor, sharp and deliberate, not the random groan of a dying vessel. Brendan stiffened, his hand drifting toward the sidearm clipped at his hip. Tell me that was just the reactor popping again. Lauren shook her head, already packing her kit. No reactor I've heard makes footsteps. They moved quickly, instinctively close, weapons drawn now as they edged through the fractured corridor. The emergency lights flickered, throwing jagged shadows across the walls. The sound came again, closer this time, heavy and deliberate. Thomas signaled for silence, pressing his back against the wall near the bend of the corridor. His pulse pounded in his ears, but his grip on the rifle stayed steady. The universe might have been bigger and stranger than anything Earth had prepared them for, but fear was familiar, and he knew how to use it. A figure emerged from the smoke, tall and armored, its helmet glinting with the faint reflection of firelight from the wreckage. Not the same as the soldier they had saved. Different armor, darker, heavier, with edges that looked grown rather than forged. The figure paused when it saw them. Then it tilted its head slowly, almost curious, almost amused. Brendan muttered under his breath, I've got a bad feeling he isn't here to shake hands. The figure raised a weapon, long and organic looking, pulsing faintly with some kind of inner light. Thomas reacted before thought had time to catch up. Down? The corridor erupted in a flash of searing energy, the blast tearing through the spot they'd been standing only moments before. Metal warped, sparks showered, and the walls shook with the impact. The humans scrambled behind what cover they could find, the stench of scorched metal filling the air. Lauren's voice was tight with panic but controlled. That thing isn't Dominion or Council. I don't recognize that armor. Neither do I, Thomas said, teeth clenched as he checked his rifle charge. But it sure as hell recognizes us. The alien warrior advanced, deliberate and unhurried, like it knew exactly how this was going to end. And for the first time since stepping into the graveyard of the Galactic War, Thomas felt a chill he couldn't shake. They hadn't stumbled onto a battlefield. They'd stumbled into a hunt. The first shot had already gutted the corridor, and Thomas knew another would turn the three of them into ash. He pressed his shoulder into a fractured bulkhead, lungs burning from the acrid smoke, trying to hear past the pounding in his chest. The enemy's footsteps were steady, unhurried, like it was enjoying the chase. Brendan ducked beside him, his pistol trembling in his grip. That thing isn't even rushing. It's walking at us like we're prey, Thomas finished, voice hard. He pulled a quick breath, then shouted across the wreckage. Lauren's status? Pinned, she answered from behind a slanted slab of collapsed ceiling. Sparks rained over her as she checked her rifle, her eyes sharp but her jaw tight. 2 charges left. Then it's just fists and curses. The alien weapon pulsed again, its energy whine rising, and Thomas yanked Brendan back as another blast tore through the wall where they'd been crouched. The shockwave threw shards across the corridor, one slicing a shallow cut across Brendan's cheek. Okay, Brendan spat, blood mixing with sweat. New plan. Run. Fast. Far. Thomas's gaze flicked across the corridor. The ship was dying, every groan of the hull told him they didn't have long. They could run, yes, but that thing would follow. And judging by the look in its slow, deliberate movements, it wouldn't stop until every last one of them was down. He made the call. We split. Draw it off balance. Lauren's head whipped toward him. That's suicide. No, Thomas said, locking eyes with her. It's the only shot we've got. He didn't wait for an argument. He surged out from cover, rifle up, and fired a burst straight into the advancing figure. The round sparked across the armor, barely slowing it, but it turned its head, focusing fully on him. Come on, Thomas muttered, ducking as the alien weapon lit again. The blast skimmed over his shoulder, the heat biting into his skin. He bolted down the corridor, the armored figure moving after him with that same terrible calm. Behind him, Brendan and Lauren moved in sync, breaking into the side passages, firing from angles to force the creature to turn. Every second they bought felt stolen, every shot a drop of water against a wildfire. Tell me you've got a brilliant trick coming, Brendan shouted into comms, his voice ragged. Working on it, Thomas answered, though he had nothing but instinct and grit. They burst into a wider chamber, the ship's gutted hangar. Hull breaches opened into the void, sealed by flickering energy fields. Wrecked fighters floated in broken harnesses, their hulls torn like paper. The hunter stepped into the hangar after them, framed by the red haze of failing systems. It raised its weapon slowly, like it already saw the outcome. Thomas saw something else, the ruptured fuel lines spilling vapor across the floor. He didn't think, he just aimed low and fired. The shot struck the leaking line. Fire ripped across the hangar in a roaring wave, slamming into the alien. For the first time, the creature staggered, its armor flaring with dull orange heat as it braced against the inferno. Brendan whooped, half relief, half hysteria. Finally. Tell me I'm not the only one who saw that thing stumble. Lauren didn't celebrate. Her voice was sharp, grim. It stumbled. It didn't fall. Through the flames, the alien straightened. Its weapon burned with renewed fury, the light inside it swelling like a star about to collapse. Thomas's blood ran cold. He grabbed Brendan's arm and shouted at both of them. Move. Now. The three of them sprinted across the hangar, leaping over debris, the heat clawing at their backs. The alien's weapon released in a blinding surge, the blast tearing through the hangar wall. The energy field shattered, and the vacuum of space roared inward. The last thing Thomas felt was the floor buckling beneath his boots as the ship itself began to tear apart, the void pulling at everything not bolted down. And in that moment, as alarms howled and air ripped free, one thought drilled into his skull. The alien hadn't just been trying to kill them. It had been testing them. The world turned into fire and silence. One moment Thomas Sloan was running, lungs searing with smoke, and the next the hangar wall was gone. The vacuum tore at him with invisible claws, dragging breath, sound, and hope into the void. He clamped his hand around a railing, every muscle in his arm screaming as his body lifted off the deck. Brendan tumbled past, arms flailing. For an instant Thomas thought he'd lose him, then saw Brendan's hand slam onto a jagged panel. His grip held, barely, his face twisted in pain as the pull of space dragged at his body. Lauren's voice crackled over comms, sharp and ragged. I'm pinned. Thomas whipped his head around. She was caught beneath a twisted support beam, the vacuum tearing at her body as she clung to what little cover she had. Her free hand was slipping. Don't move. Thomas shouted, though she had no choice in the matter. His lungs felt ready to collapse. His vision pulsed black at the edges. The alien hunter strode through the storm like gravity still existed, its armor flaring with stabilizers that carved lines of fire against the void. It moved steadily toward them, weapon raised, utterly unmoved by the chaos. Thomas's heart slammed against his ribs. He could feel it now, what the dying soldier had met. This wasn't a war. It was a purge. He forced air through his chest and swung his rifle one-handed, firing into the pipes above. The rounds tore through the metal, releasing a surge of venting gas that sprayed into the vacuum. The explosion wasn't fire, it was force. The blast knocked the alien off balance for the first time, its stabilizers flickering as it staggered sideways. Brendan shouted, voice raw. Tom, grab her. Grab her now. Thomas dug deep, pulling himself against the suction, inch by inch, until he reached Lauren. He locked one arm around her and heaved with every ounce of strength left in his body. The beam shifted, then broke free, and the two of them were yanked clear into the open space of the hangar. Brendan's voice cut across the channel, strained and sharp. Starboard fighter, half intact. Go. Thomas didn't think. He pulled Lauren with him, the two of them flung forward by the dying ship's final convulsions. Brendan dove ahead, catching the side of the wrecked craft. Thomas slammed into it an instant later, Lauren clutched to his chest. They clambered inside the cracked cockpit, slamming the hatch closed just as the hangar gave way entirely. The roar of silence swallowed the wreckage. The ship that had been their tomb fractured into glowing shards, scattered into the stars. Inside the ruined fighter, the three of them lay gasping, bruised and bloodied, their breaths coming in ragged bursts. Brendan let out a broken laugh that tipped toward hysteria. Remind me to write this down. First humans to salvage an alien death trap while an armored nightmare tried to, what? Collect us. Hunt us. Lauren pressed her head against the wall, her voice low and grim. He wasn't trying to kill us quick. He wanted to see how long we lasted. Thomas closed his eyes for a moment, then opened them again, his gaze hard. He saw enough. The fighter's console flickered weakly, battered but alive. Lauren slid into the seat, coaxing systems online. The comm unit sparked, static filling the cockpit before resolving into fragments of alien transmissions. Brendan leaned in, listening. His face paled. They're not even talking about each other anymore. Council, Dominion, they're both broadcasting the same thing. Contain the humans. The words dropped like ice in Thomas's chest. It wasn't just the hunter. It wasn't just one battle. The galaxy had noticed Earth and it had made its decision. Lauren's hands hovered over the controls, trembling despite herself. If they already think we're the threat, We don't have much time before this spreads everywhere. The cockpit lights flared with a warning. The hunter had locked onto them again, streaking through the debris, its armor burning like a star as it closed the distance. Brendan swore, panic rising. You've got to be kidding me. That thing survived a ship collapse. Thomas clenched his jaw, gripping the edge of the console. His voice was steady even as his pulse thundered. We're not running from it. Not anymore. Lauren turned to him sharply. What are you saying? He looked at both of them, his eyes steady, resolute. If the galaxy wants to hunt humanity, then the galaxy needs to see what happens when humanity hunts back. The fighter's engines screamed to life, shaking the cockpit as the debris field lit with the hunter's approach. The fighter screamed through the debris field, every vibration rattling through its fractured hull. Lauren wrestled with the controls, coaxing the half-dead craft into something resembling flight. Warning lights flared across the console, but the engines held. Behind them, the armored hunter closed the distance, its weapon glowing brighter with each pulse, energy building like a sun about to burst. Brendan wiped sweat and blood from his face, muttering under his breath. This is insane. We're in a coffin with thrusters, and that thing's chasing us like it's got all the time in the universe. Thomas stood braced between them, one hand steady on the console, the other tightening around his rifle, though he knew bullets wouldn't be enough. His mind was racing. Running wasn't survival anymore. Running only confirmed what the alien had already decided. Humans were prey. We're not escaping, he said flatly. We're ending this. Lauren's head snapped toward him. Ending it? Tom, that thing shrugged off a starship collapsing. You want me to ram us into it? Not ram, he said. His eyes flicked to the readouts, then to the leaking fuel reserves flashing in red. His voice hardened. We lure it in. We light it up. And we show whatever's watching that humanity doesn't break. Brendan let out a shaky laugh, half hysteria, half admiration. So the plan is suicide with style. No, Thomas said, staring at the hunter closing in. The plan is survival with teeth. Lauren's hands moved before she'd fully convinced herself. She banked the fighter hard, skimming close to a drifting husk of a Dominion battleship. The hunter followed, weaving through the wreckage with terrifying precision. Its movements weren't just pursuit, they were deliberate, like it was studying every reaction, every gamble the humans made. Fuel's primed, Brendan reported, his fingers flying over the flickering panels. His voice shook but carried a spark of something fierce. All I need is your mark. The cockpit shuddered as another blast tore past, grazing the fighter's wing. Metal screamed, the craft lurching violently. Thomas planted his feet and leaned forward, eyes locked on the hunter as it cut through the wreckage like a shadow. Wait for it, wait. The hunter raised its weapon, energy blazing. Now! Thomas roared. Lauren rolled the fighter, opening the vents. Brendan slammed the trigger. The leaking fuel ignited in a blinding chain reaction, a wall of fire and shrapnel erupting across the hunter's path. The blast tore the wreckage apart, shockwaves rattling the cockpit as the light swallowed everything. For a breathless moment, silence. Then the flames parted. The hunter emerged, armor scorched, movement slower but unbroken. Its weapon still glowed, its head turning toward the fighter like nothing had changed. Brendan's voice cracked. Oh, come on. That should have cooked it. Lauren's hands shook over the controls. Tom, we can't do this again. We're out of fuel, out of tricks. Not out of fight, Thomas cut in. His eyes locked on the monster as it advanced through the inferno. And then he noticed something, tiny fractures spiderwebbing across the alien's chest plate where the fire had burned hottest. He raised his rifle, aiming straight at the cracks. We bleed it like anything else. The hunter raised its weapon. Thomas fired first. The rifle rounds hammered into the fractures, sparks flaring, one round finally piercing through with a spray of molten fragments. The alien staggered, its weapon faltering, the glow inside its chest dimming. Lauren seized the moment. She banked hard, slamming the fighter's nose straight into the weakened enemy. The cockpit shook like it was tearing apart, the collision rattling their bones. The hunter was flung back, crushed against the remains of the battleship. Its armor split with a sound like glass breaking under pressure. The light inside flickered once, then guttered out. For the first time the hunter was still. The three humans sat in silence, the only sound their ragged breathing and the strained hum of failing systems. Brendan leaned back, voice hoarse. Somebody write this down. 3 humans, 1 half-dead fighter, and the galaxy's worst nightmare taken out with stubbornness and bad luck. Lauren stared at the fading wreck outside, her voice quiet, almost reverent. It wasn't just here for us. It was here to test us. to see if humans cracked. Thomas didn't look away from the shattered hunter. Then let the galaxy hear our answer. He switched the comms to open broadcast, every frequency, every channel. His voice carried raw and steady into the stars. This is Thomas Sloan of Earth. We're not prey. We're not trophies. Hunt us and you'll find out why no one hunts humanity twice. The words vanished into the void, carried across the scattered wreckage, across the systems still listening. And in the silence that followed, something shifted. Not just in the three of them, bruised and bloodied in the cockpit of a dying fighter, but in the galaxy itself. The war was no longer just between empires. It was humanity's now. And humanity had just declared it would rule.